President Muhammadu Buhari yesterday visited Kuje Medium Security Custodial Center, Abuja, which was attacked on Tuesday night by scores of armed terrorists, and queried the intelligence gathering system of authorities at the center. The president, who spent 30 minutes to assess the extent of damage at the correctional center, however, wondered why prison defenses failed to work and immediately requested for a comprehensive report on the incident. But the notorious terrorist group, Islamic State in West African province ISWAP, has claimed responsibility for the violent attack on Kuje prison in Abuja. Accompanied by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, and his Chief of Staff, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, the president said at the end of the visit that he was expecting a comprehensive report on the incident. Meanwhile, Special Advisor to President Buhari, Muhammadu Buhari, on media and publicity, Femi Adesina, says the president will embark on his international engagement despite attacks on his advanced convoy to Daura yesterday, which left 2 people injured. Adesina made the remark on Wednesday while briefing State House correspondent after the weekly Federal Executive Council meeting. He says the president will not give in to terrorists and he will not jettison his international obligation.
Mr. President himself is billed to travel to Senegal this afternoon for an international conference. He will return to Abuja tomorrow and thereafter proceed to his hometown Daura for Salah. So it was the advanced team that was going ahead, made of security, protocol, media, transport, all the departments that have 1 or 2 things to do with the president's stay and comfort in Daura were the ones going ahead. So shortly before they got to their destination and land around Dusima area, you know that place is awash with banditry. So it was said that some group of bandits came out of the forest and engaged them. You should never give in to terrorists. The moment terrorists begin to stop you from doing things, then we might as well throw up our hands and surrender. The president should go ahead.
All right. Okay, for more on the Kuje prison attack, which was carried out by suspected terrorists that led to the jailbreak of 879 inmates, Arise correspondent Fenna Odura brought us this report.
Rearrested inmates of the Medium Security Custodial Center, Kuje, are returned to the facility. Officials say over 443 are still at large after the attack and jailbreak. Considering the profile of some of these criminals who are terrorists, there is enough reason to worry. A look at the external view reveals the horror of what happened. Burnt vehicles, including buses used to convey suspects to court, and other utility vehicles litter the premises, some still smoking. While none of the officers of the center will speak on camera, we were told tales of how a first wave of attack orchestrated through this hole at the back of the building was foiled by gallant officers. However, the terrorists reinforced and made a bold entrance, blasting through the main gates. The casualties of the attack are security agents and 4 inmates. Forensic experts are also seen trying to piece together evidence to help reveal the identities of the attackers and the kind of ammunition used. The facility also welcomed government officials who came to see things for themselves, including President Muhammadu Buhari. He was given a tour to see the destruction firsthand. Some speak to the media.
Everything is under control. The people who came to do these activities, from the records, we believe that they belong to a particular group, and most likely they are Boko Harams, because we have sizable number of Boko Harams that are in detentions, and presently we could not locate any of them. All the number, I think there are about 64 that is in the prison, and none of them now is available. They have all escaped.
Well, basically, I came in this morning to commiserate with the Comptroller General of the Nigerian Correctional Services and his colleague of the Nigerian Civil Defense, as well as His Royal Highness, the Gomo of Kuje, over the incident that happened yesterday, and also to commend the gallant officers that tried their best, and also to sympathize over the death of a very fine, gallant officer from the Nigerian Civil Defense Authority who was gunned down by the criminals.
Residents of Kuje community gathered in different groups discussing their experiences of a traumatic night. The Medium Security Custodial Center, Kuje, is the most prominent government facility in the local government, and they want it adequately protected.
It was actually terrible. At about 9:30 to 10, I got a call from a friend. We were talking, and prior to that time, I was on headset, Bluetooth headset, so I was dancing to music, but I heard a lot of noise. I thought it was these fireworks and all those Vanguard and all of that. So when I got the call, I dropped it, and I started conversing with my friend on the phone. And I told her, okay, see what's happening. It's like they are shooting outside. So I went close to the window in the parlor, and I put the phone on speaker. Can you hear what's happening? Then the next thing I heard was like a loud bang. And it shook the roof, it shook the windows. I had to run into the room, and then I knew this was serious. And that was like, let's say 10 o'clock at night, 10 p.m. yesterday.
But basically, it all boils down to the ineptitude in the system. Our security system has been compromised. And along the line, there has to be an holistic overhaul in our security apparatus. I repeat, there has to be an holistic overhaul in our security apparatus. Because if this kind of a thing can happen in a place as sensitive as Kuje, it means nobody is safe.
While the attack at the facility in Kuje, one of the most secured in Nigeria, leaves a sour taste, it comes on the heels of previous ones in Imo, Kogi, Edo, and Oyo State. However, it is expected that following a first-hand inspection by the president, there will be enough political will to ensure that correctional facilities in Nigeria are adequately secured. Ferdinand Duroha, Arise News.
Wow, another sad one to know.
It really is. And now the toll of escaped inmates is now pushing 6,000 in the space of 1 year. That is really terrible. And I think it's perfectly in order for President Muhammadu Buhari to have publicly expressed his disappointment and say, how could the terrorists have done what they did? How were they so organized, able to attack and then get away with it? It's extremely important that he said that because of this noxious perversion of loyalty and patriotism that we see in this country, where people try to defend the indefensible and really reduce themselves into calling black white. At least now you can hear that even the commander-in-chief is completely horrified. There's no need to rush to defend complete ineptitude. And he has said there should be an investigation, so we're going to be looking forward to the results of that. But this is not the first time Kuje prison was attacked. I said so yesterday, 6 years ago there was an attack. Why was nothing done to bolster security? Why were Boko Haram inmates in a medium security facility, for example? Perhaps they should have been in a maximum security facility. All those questions need to be answered. And those inmates that escaped, in the process of escaping, they killed one of our security officers. That is totally unacceptable. That man should still be alive today. He was failed, and it has to be identified exactly what those failings were and who is responsible. As he died, somebody must lose their job. It cannot just be swept under the carpet and we move on. And I know it's easier said than done because I'm aware that back in 2018, a Deputy Controller General of Prisons was dismissed because of a prison break. And the industrial court reinstated him with full benefits because of a lapse in his termination letter, which did not state specifically, this is why you're being terminated. The prison break occurred on this day. Can you imagine? That's why he got his job back. So it's actually easier said than done, sacking people for ineptitude. There will be somebody somewhere in the system to protect them. That's another problem that we have in this country. There should not be any kind of protection. This has happened before. It should never have happened again in Kuje prisons, at least. At least they should have learned a lesson. It appears that none was learned. Now ISWAP gets to go on this victory lap and pat themselves on the back that they have succeeded once more in this terror. President Muhammadu Buhari went to the scene, as I said, and he made those comments, and off he went to Dakar. And he's been criticized for leaving the country after this kind of attack happened. But I do agree with the presidency's spokespersons who said that he has to continue with his program, because all over the world, that's what we hear. That's the general rhetoric that we hear, that terrorists are actually trying to attack people, not just in terms of murder and mayhem, but actually our way of life, such that you change your agenda to bend to their will. And it should not ever be seen that the president of Nigeria has been cowed by terrorists. But on the other hand, it does look to some as if the president is becoming inured to security attacks, such that it's not a big deal for him. He can just go off on a trip. So there are two ways of looking at it. But I do accept the argument presented by the presidency. But for me, it is a disgrace. People in the whole country, not just in that environment, are now endangered because they're going to come out deadlier than ever, having been cooped up in prison for years, we're told. Many of them have been cooped up there for at least 6 years, some 10 years. So what is their mood? What plans do they have? I can only shudder to imagine.
So sad what is happening, and commiserations, to the family of the gallant officer,
Awful.
the NSCDC officer, like you said, Tundu. Nigeria failed him again. And like they say, may Nigeria not happen to us. Because Nigeria happened to that officer. The sad thing is, we know the reasons for these things. We know the failings in the system. Ferdinand Duroha's report pointed one out. How can you have a fence with a gaping hole like that, and they tried using that hole the first time they were repelled, and the fence was not fixed? Point number one. Secondly, the president made a tweet. He put a tweet out yesterday that he's disappointed at the intelligence system. I'm happy that everybody's owning up to it now. And the president is saying he's disappointed. But he said he wanted a comprehensive report. Sir, Mr. President, sir, no, you don't need a comprehensive. You saw the comprehensive report for yourself when you went there yesterday. What we want now is a comprehensive action to be able to avert this. We've been having jailbreaks. Remember the case in Imo? That was terrible. And like you said, this Kuje prison had been attacked before. An attempt had been made on this Kuje prison. Remember the case in Kogi? What did the comprehensive report do to solve those attacks? Nothing. We remember how jailbreak happened everywhere in this country during the NSAS protests. So it's not a time for comprehensive reports again. It is the time to set up anything, not even setting up anything. I don't want to say set up anything. It is a time for action, because when you set up committee, the committee will set up another committee. And if you see, I think somebody once said, if government doesn't want to do anything, they set up a committee. When government is not ready, they set up a committee. But not the time for committee. This is the time for action. Like you said, heads must roll. People must take responsibility. The intelligence community, that's another one. The president has indicted them that he's disappointed. So something must be done as regards to security architecture. We can't continue this way, because all of these are things we could have averted. It's just because of ineptitude. And the president had no reason traveling out of the country. In times of crisis, leaders stay back in their country. They set up committee. In England, as funny as Boris Johnson might be, at a point like this, Boris Johnson will set up something called a Cobra Committee with all the top security chiefs, and they are looking for solutions. Because you need to reassure Nigerians, and you need to speak to Nigerians. Nobody will reassure Nigerians like the president they voted for. This is the time. You see, it's in time of crisis you know a leader. Why is Winston Churchill still being celebrated? Because of those, those messages to the people of Britain during the war. It has been proven empirically that those messages helped the people of Britain go through that war more than anything, more than the troops being deployed on the field. This is the time. If it's not too much, the president should have addressed the country based on this attack. Talk to your people as a leader. Then set up a committee and do the needful. By now, 24 hours time, we should have apprehended some of those people that perpetrated this act. The intelligence community should be in overdrive working. Because you see, in a country, you need to reestablish confidence. You see why Nigerians complain so much about their country is because they are losing confidence. And you need to do everything, because confidence is a mental thing. Once you lose confidence mentally, it's all over. You might not have lost the battle, but once you lose confidence, it's all over. So we should try as much as possible to bring confidence back by doing the needful. Set up, a Cobra crack team. See what you're going to do as regards it. Apprehend people. Go all out. Be ruthless with these terrorists that are the enemy of Nigeria. And another thing, I think I've been hearing stories in the media that the president, some people are saying the president should not go to Katsina because, there was an attack on his advice convoy. The president should go to Katsina and go have his Salah holiday. It's a it's a bold move, because if he doesn't go to Katsina, then it's showing that these terrorists are winning Nigeria. And now we must do everything to increase the psyche of Nigeria. See, there are already roadblocks everywhere in Abuja. People are already scared. I know a lot of people that are telling me that, Rufai, I'll have to come to Lagos for my Salah holiday. Can you imagine that?
Terrible. Yeah,
people are already scared. People can't sleep with their two eyes closed in Abuja. So you need to bring confidence back. So if he goes to Katsina with Katsina for the Salah holiday, then from there he should walk out, a way of settling all of this. And this should be a watershed moment in turning the tide against insecurity in Nigeria. Because you see, what we always do is we condemn, but there should always be a watershed moment. If you want to win any battle, there must be a moment where you say enough is enough. You can't keep saying, oh, we'll do something about it, we condemn the attack. No. If we're truly ready, let's use this as a moment to say enough is enough, and it will not happen again in this country. And that's the way to fight this, because Nigerians need to be given that confidence back. They're losing it. I tell you for free, Tundu, Nigerians love Nigeria. But the leadership sometimes make them lose confidence in their country. That's why they say the things they say. It's not that they don't like the country. It's not that they don't want the unity of the country. But when we have leadership that doesn't encourage them, so, these are your people. Put them in line.
Well, elections matter.
Elections
Nigerians
matter.
did not elect an orator, now did they?
No, they have to elect one next time. Somebody that talks to people. Families of the kidnapped Abuja train passengers have intensified their plea to the federal government and relevant agencies to hasten the release of the loved ones in captivity. During a peaceful protest in Kaduna to mark 100 days since the abduction of their loved ones, they say only negotiations can secure the freedom of their loved ones from captivity. Arise News correspondent Nisi Gabriel reports.
100 days of sorrow, torture, and pain for the families and those kidnapped on the ill-fated Kaduna-bound train. Amid reports that those in captivity are suffering from gunshot injury and snake bites, grieving family members took to the streets of Kaduna to protest and demand that their loved ones be released from captivity.
Today is exactly 100 days since our loved ones were abducted in the ill-fated AK-9 train attack. It was a journey of 2 hours that has turned to 100 harrowing days. Since these 100 days, things have not been the same with us. One can only imagine what our loved ones have been going through in these last 100 days in the deep forest. The same clothes, no clean water to drink, no medical care. A lot of them are sick. One has even been shot.
Amina was among the 11 people recently released by the terrorists after a series of negotiations with the federal government. Her experiences are unpleasant, and it's the same or even worse for those still in captivity.
I spent 74 days there. To spend 1 second in that place is not easy at all. You don't want it. We will wake up crying. It's not easy. It's not easy. Please, they should help. Some people have lost their sight. Some lose their hands. So many things there. So many things. The children are all sick, sleeping under the tree with rainfall, grasses everywhere. We sleep on the floor. After rain, you understand, after the rain, we will still lie down on the floor and sleep. It's not easy.
Relatives and friends of the kidnapped train passengers are calling on the federal government to intensify negotiations with the terrorists to secure the release of their loved ones.
We are calling to the federal government, let them go into negotiation with these people, because using force cannot solve the problem. Negotiation is the best, because through negotiation, these 11 people were released. Let them continue. If they say they will use force, there's no way.
The terrorists have made their demands known. Not all of them have been fulfilled by the federal government. For now, 11 of the kidnapped train passengers have been released, with 50 of them still in captivity. Nisi Gabriel, Arise News, Kaduna.
Another sad reminder, Sundu.
This is just infuriating. It breaks your heart. When you listen to Amina's account and you recall that there's a newborn baby in these conditions. You recall that there's one of those abductees who has been shot, is dealing with a gunshot wound in these conditions. And our federal government heard the appeal from the families and have done absolutely nothing. It makes my blood boil, quite frankly. And you recall when this disaster occurred, the then Minister of Transport, Rotimi Amechi, came out to say that it could have all been prevented if security surveillance that he had approached the Federal Executive Council for had been approved, and it was rejected. The Federal Executive Council responded via leaked memo to show that the company that the minister had approved didn't have the capacity, in their opinion, to carry out that contract. But at that point, what then? If that company did not have the capacity, fine, move on to the next, get another company. But what you do not do is launch trains, applaud yourselves, talk about how you're providing infrastructure, and this kind of disaster befalls Nigerians. It could have been any one of us, and tomorrow it could be. The audacity of these terrorists is just really what is so striking. Their heartlessness, their cruelty. They first released one gentleman talking about how they're doing it on compassionate grounds. Then they released the next tranche because there was negotiations with the family. They have said to the federal government, release prisoners. Some of those prisoners have now been broken out of jail, I imagine, but they want some prisoners to be released. I fail to see why the federal government of Nigeria cannot do that, because it's done elsewhere. You remember the backlash President Obama got because he swapped one American soldier for terrorist ISIS prisoners, but he was trying to save the life of that one person. And that is what you do when you have some kind of compassion, some kind of respect for the sanctity of human life. People should not be treated in this fashion, not even for 1 hour, much less 11 days.
I mean, it's very sad, Tundu, and it's just, it's just another reminder of what is going on in Nigeria. The ineptitude on the part of government. But what is government? I want to break that word down called government. It's a collection of people heading individual units, doing their own power play to show their supremacy. Collection of people heading individual units that makes up government, but they're having their own power play against each other to show their supremacy. I read an exclusive report out of Desert Herald. Desert Herald, is a paper, an online news medium. One of the aides of Sheikh Gumi writes that paper. He was the one first negotiating on behalf of the federal government with the bandits and all of that. It was the one the bandits elected to negotiate, Mamu or something, that's his name. And you need to see what went on. The fact that across various, sections or ministries or, departments of people that were supposed to carry on with the negotiation, how their own personal interests and internal wrangling disrupted the negotiation process to the extent that they had to pull out.
Yes.
At the expense of people. I mean, and it just goes back to make that point of the Ministry of Transport saying, okay, we sent a proposal, but we now see that the proposal was sent with a company that didn't even have the capacity to do the job because of personal interest. And that's why we need to live beyond this personal interest. Just like Dr. Abati was saying the other day, that when we're talking about implementing the Orosanye report, many ministers don't want them to cut from their ministries because for them it's their own personal interest. Except we have the mindset that we are going to governance to serve, not what we can make from the Nigerian state, then we'll not move further. That's one on the side. Because you see, that collective infighting rubs off on government and the outlook looks bad at the expense of people's life. They've been there for over 100 days.
Disgusting.
And people are there, people are dying. The effect of a gunshot wound is so severe. Etimessin, Aaron did a very good report on Etimessin.
I watched that.
Etimessin had a gunshot wound over 30 years ago. The gunshot wound almost made him lose his leg recently. How much more somebody that has been shot in the leg and that doesn't get medical care? So we'd like to call on the government again. They must pull out all the stops. If people's heads must roll, they must roll. You see, you must have a government that sacks people frequently. Yes. Because if people are not competent, you can't keep them on because of loyalty. No. Like I said yesterday by Dwight Eisenhower, that the country that values privilege over virtue will soon lose the privilege and the virtue. And that's what's happening in Nigeria. So whoever is involved in these negotiations to get these people out, if he's not getting results, the number one person should sack him. And we must do everything to bring these people back. All of them and restore the pride and sanity in our nation. Anybody that is involved in this that is not doing his job, sack them. We must have a government that sacks people frequently to get results, because the most important thing is we must get results for the Nigerian people and restore confidence. That's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll have Rotus, we have Michael to give us updates on Africa, global business activities. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rotus Adiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Sundu. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all our viewers. Yeah, the House of Reps, they've been holding some open hearings on fuel consumption in the nation. Basically, they have been probing exactly how much fuel we consume, which is incredibly amazing that we do not know how much fuel we consume. Let's take this. We actually there was a report on this, and I just want to take an excerpt from one of the members of the committee that's on looking at this probe. Let's take a listen to what he said, because he was lamenting calling governors. I've been calling people to the ad hoc hearing who were not responding.
There are so many ways to get such information. Yes. I want to make it very clear that if you conceal information, there are so many ways to get such information. You only run yourself into trouble by concealing information. The topic for this investigation is a very controversial issue. I'm sure you are all aware of that. It is the volume of consumption that determines how much subsidy that you have to pay with Nigerian government funds. Huge sums of money are being spent on subsidy payments. Nigerians don't know how much fuel we are consuming that warrants the payment of such humongous amounts. Ministry of Finance, not here also. Central Bank of Nigeria, not here. Office of Accountant General, the popular Office of Accountant General is not here, represented by anybody. Federal Inland Revenue Services, not here. I mean, this is not fair.
You remember the conversation we were having yesterday about accountability and, so, I mean, there you have it. So there's an investigation, they've called them and they just ignored them and just didn't show up. Related to this, the Governors Forum, the Nigerian Governors Forum have said that fuel subsidy is impacting payment of salaries. So it's good that they finally come out and openly said this. Now, this is related to that hearing at the House of Reps. They sent a memo to the Governors Forum that they should, come and speak on the amount of fuel that's being consumed. So the Governors Forum now forwarded them a memo they just referred and say, hey, look, we did a report on this in November of last year and had ad hoc committee that was chaired by Governor El Rufai, where they said that, listen, we already did a report on this. I think about 1/3 of the states that have bordering countries, that border other nations, that's in Nigeria, are responsible for about 65% of the fuel that's consumed in the country. In fact, do you remember this headline from last year? Let's take a look at this day headline from this was May. Yeah, this was May last year. Governors okay full deregulation of petrol. 385 naira pump price. You remember this? This was May 2021. This was all part of the investigations into exactly what should happen if fuel is deregulated. So you see, this is one of the reasons why when the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria said that they can't sell at 165, that at 180 is what they should sell at, I was scratching my head like, how is 180 profitable? Because even that 385, in fact, after that report was released, in the memo that the Governors Forum sent to the House of Reps, they said that the situation has deteriorated even worse since that report came out. Yes. They mentioned that, the Federation accounts, the deductions because of subsidy have increased. So the Federation accounts is not able to get as much money as before. So look, basically, at this point, not really sure what else needs to be done on this subsidy matter. Maybe, I was thinking, the demonstrations we saw where the fuel subsidy was supposed to be removed and people were protesting against it, maybe we need to see that level of demonstrations to have it removed, because I'm not really sure who else is going to talk, from the Governors Forum to the Ministry of Finance to everybody else, Central Bank, everybody else that said that subsidy needs to be removed. So, but there you have it. Salaries are being impacted. So that's about that. What else is going on? Aviation, I believe the African AFRA, African Airlines Association, they said that African Airlines are set to lose about $4.1 billion this year. due mostly to fuel costs, increase in fuel costs, jet fuel for a number of airlines. Also, the fact that the industry is still recovering from COVID and the impact that COVID has had on travel. So there's a whole lot. But, you know, I think about this. Do you see what's happening in the West with airlines there? July 4th, airlines they had to cancel flights because they couldn't meet up with demand. Also in Europe, it's the dynamic is very interesting. I mean, they're also being impacted by fuel costs, but there's more people travel there, the volumes are larger. But it's just a very interesting dynamic that over in the West, airlines cannot meet up with demand and they are canceling flights here. You know, we're not able to airlines are struggling to excuse the pun, to take off. And then finally, Kenya, M-Pesa, they are wading into buy now, pay later. So M-Pesa is offering, I think, up to 100,000 shillings if you're buying goods from overseas. They're offering loans that allow you to make purchases. You don't have to pay any interest on them for a period of time. This buy now, pay later thing is it's taken off over in the West, and so they're actually getting into this, and they're challenging, you know, other finance outlets that are offering loans as well. So that's what's happening across the continent.
It's different with regards to the airlines. In the West, some of those issues are because of staff shortages.
Right.
There were massive layoffs over the COVID-19 period. Right. And now this mad scramble to rehire those people is proving difficult because they've decided to look for other jobs. They don't want to get to work at 3 a.m. It's no longer that appealing. Yeah. And obviously there's also been a pay cut, so they don't want to come back to their jobs. Right. Trying to train new staff, all of that is causing bottlenecks. That's why they have to cancel flights. I don't think there was a really long-term planning here. Yeah. You can't just lay off people during the pandemic. When the businesses start to reopen, when the world starts to reopen, then what do? There was no contingency plan. So that's what we're seeing there. Yeah. With regards to the House of Representatives, sort of bemoaning the absenteeism, you might recall the Speaker, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, let the service chiefs have it over this same issue. It's embarrassing when people do not know that we have 3 arms of government, co-equal arms of government. This is no longer the military. I've got to speak really slowly. I've got to idiot-proof it. This is no longer the military era where you have the constitution and the parliament suspended. We have a parliament. Right. When you snub the parliament, you are snubbing the people. When you feel you're too big to deign to show up to a House of Representatives committee, you are telling Nigerians you are not accountable to us. That word you like, Roses, and it's a very important word. So I actually think it's nothing short of disgraceful, quite frankly. And with regards to your point about the labor unions having to sort of drum up support, that has about the chance of a snowflake in hell. Labor unions coming out to say, increase money, increase the money that we pay for fuel. It's not going to happen. Yeah. And I think it's just this lack of political will, kicking the can down the road. Nobody wants to be the bad guy with an election around the corner. You don't want it to be your administration that, you know, unleashed chaos on the people. So everybody is now pushing it to the next person. But somebody is going to have to take the bull by the horns.
Exactly.
And somebody has to do that quickly and put the cat among the pigeons. Yeah. Truth has to be told. Accountability is our problem. We are not honest, we are not transparent about what this subsidy scam is. And it's a scam. You know why I say it's a scam? When it was being run under the former regime where everybody was just told, bring product in, then we'll pay you for it. And you saw how many funny, very nebulous companies claimed they brought oil in when they brought water in and they claimed subsidy before the Ike Imokwede committee quashed all of them and stopped all of that.
Exactly.
And now it's even continued, you know, with the NNPC now importing solely. It's even become more nebulous. You know, in deference to MQ Abiola, today makes it many years he passed, 7th of July. 24 years. 24 long While MQ Abiola was campaigning in 1993, I remember what he said vividly, that I will publish every barrel of oil lifted in this country, amount it's sold for in the newspaper every day. Those were his campaign promises. From 1993 to date, we are not being told how many liters of petrol is taken out of our depots every morning that we are paying subsidies for in this country. Except we are accountable, then nothing can move forward.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the problem with Nigeria. We are paying subsidies. What are we paying? How many million liters are Nigeria consuming? Nigeria is consuming every day. How many million liters are being taken away from the depot?
No idea.
Every week. How many million liters?
It's crazy.
I challenge them to publish it in the paper every day if they can. I bet you, Rotus, I will come here tomorrow, they can't take that challenge. We know tankers are coming to the depot. How many million liters are they taking away?
It's the smoggling. It's the smoggling.
And the smuggling.
That's
the
part of
with,
so how
with
many
other countries?
where fuel is sold for hire. Yeah.
So how many million liters? Because now the number they are estimating is 100 million. By the calculation, a lot of people are saying that it's about 45 to 50 million liters per day. That's what we should be consuming. And the numbers all of a sudden have gone up. Look at during when crude oil prices were coming down, and look at how much petrol prices went down at a point, and the NNPC came out there to say that they have pulled out subsidies.
I remember that.
All of a sudden, during that interregnum, the price jacked up again. We need to pull out subsidies, yes. We need to also be transparent.
Very.
Secondly, concerning M-Pesa, I mean, that's the way to go. Buy now, pay later. Rotus, you'll be amazed how much it helps a lot of people get on the bandwagon to be able to buy things. But it needs to be guaranteed properly. I once run an e-commerce company. It works wonders, but who guarantees it from M-Pesa?
Right.
That's just my concern. Because you see, once you have your downline stretched because of this buy now, pay later scheme, and you have an economic downturn and people default, then it could be very disastrous.
Yeah.
So you need to get brick and mortar or any other platform to guarantee it. And I'm sure M-Pesa should be able to have the pool of funds to guarantee, but it will help them a great deal and it will help them to be able to show up their potential in the market.
Indeed.
But please, it's a challenge. Let's see how many liters of petrol is being taken out of every depot in Nigeria every day.
Isn't it just staggering how badly run this country is?
Really
Thank you, Rotus. Moving on to more business update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. At least you've got a government, which is probably a little more than I can say for what's happening here, but we'll come on to that. Asia Pacific markets mostly higher on Thursday. The Fed minutes saying that they were talking about a more restrictive stance as far as inflation's concerned. I mean, I take that to mean that they're going to be much more hawkish, but the markets actually quite liked it. They don't normally like that kind of talk, but the equity markets actually rose, particularly those in mainland China. I have to say that, and so in South Korea as well, mainland China up almost about 0.5%, and the Shenzhen component of that up about 1%. So most of the markets actually quite like this bit of certainty, clearly taking the view that inflation is horrible, really, as far as economies are concerned. Even though you're dancing on the edge of a recession, some people would say that's already happened. COVID concerns back into focus in China. Beijing is tightening the vaccine requirements there. Most people need to be vaccinated before entering in-person training centres, sports centres, entertainment venues, and so on. A resurgence of new cases in Beijing and Shanghai. Are we going to see a reflection, as we did in the past, on the Chinese economy? I think we need to wait to see. Here's an interesting one. Evergrande, the indebted, probably the most indebted company in the world, the property companies changing direction a bit. They're going towards electric vehicles, and their first model is called the Hengshi 5. Share price rocketed on the back of that. The company has now a mere $300 billion in liabilities, and it's hoping to release a debt restructuring plan towards the end of the month. Turning to South Korea, and Samsung is reporting smaller than expected profit growth. Inflation's been curbing demand there. Let me remind you, it is the world's largest smartphone and memory card maker. Server demand is up, industrial demand is up, but mobile devices down, and that's purely due to people having less to spend. Retailers' margins are also being squeezed in Singapore. Rents and electricity prices squeezing what's happening there. Retail businesses not doing well at all, hitting really everyone. And cost pressure is a big concern for many Singapore companies. companies. I'll give you an example of what's happening with their power companies. One of them, SP Group, announced electricity tariffs will go up by 8%. Again, people will have to take that on board. Sri Lanka. Now, we've talked a bit about Sri Lanka, haven't we? They have 54% inflation there. They have no petrol, of course. That's what you're seeing now. People actually either sleeping in their cars or pushing them to petrol stations. And they've actually now they've asked President Putin in Russia for help about getting fuel into the country. It's the worst crisis since its independence from the UK in 1948. And hundreds of people took to the streets of Colombia yesterday to protest against the government. So to the United States then, and those minutes from the Fed talking about a more restrictive policy if inflation fails to fall. We're looking, I'm pretty sure, 75 basis points, a 0.75% rise in July. Stock futures relatively flat as a result of that. Let's turn our attention to Russia, and they're preparing to mobilize their economy, ready for what they describe as a longer war. What this involves is giving the state control over, or greater control over private industry, optimizing the work of the defense industry complex, and now bringing in laws that can change a factory's function away from what it normally does towards military needs. It's still ramifications of EU's much vaunted trade surplus. This is Germany. This disappearing very gradually, a foreign trade deficit of €1 billion, a very significant part, a very significant moment for the German economy, which has been record trade surpluses since 1991. And it's no longer exporting what it used to other countries as well. And that highlights the strains that EU nations, particularly Germany, which is known as the powerhouse of Europe, are actually finding with surging energy and food prices. So what on earth is happening in the UK? Boris Johnson is still refusing to go. There have been many, I think up to 8:30 this morning, from when I came to my office at about 5 o'clock this morning, 7 ministers had gone. So we're talking about 50 ministers. Basically, a government losing that is not really functioning in any kind of way. Constitutionally, it's down to the Conservative Party to have another vote of confidence or no confidence in the Prime Minister. Then he has to make up his mind what most people are now saying to him. And this is before the rivals start to come forward, including the man who has been Chancellor for almost 24 hours, if that, and that's a long time in UK politics right now. What sort of economy is he planning, and will he put a bid in for the leadership? Suella Braverman, who is the Attorney General, has just been on the radio talking about how she's disappointed in what's happened, and she may well be in there as well. What they're all trying to head towards is tax cuts, corporate tax cuts, and all the rest of it. And all the Conservatives are saying, look, we need to get on with this. Even though the Prime Minister may go, we do have a mandate, because they do, from the general election in 2019. And those policies of tax cuts and making the UK a sort of a business-friendly environment are still there, buried deep though they may be in the manifesto. Bank of England once again talking about vowing to bring inflation down. This time it's the chief economist, Hugh Pill. It's hinted at further interest rate rises. I think we sort of know this, actually, and we know that inflation is relatively high at the moment, highest level in 40 years, and interest rates are at a 13-year record high of, yes, 1.25%. What is the world coming to? UK and India are planning to seal a trade deal between the two of them. This hopefully will take place before the end of October. Will tie in with the normal India holiday, Diwali, which takes place then. And there's been very little mention of New Delhi's continuing growing imports of Russian oil. Their trade ministers merely said, we had an old relationship with Russia. It's still continuing. There is no change in our position. And finally, oil prices took a bit of a crash yesterday. They were down about 5% yesterday on the more thoughts about a global recession. However, bargain hunters came out in Asia and have pushed the price now. I've got Brent at about $101 a barrel and WTI about $99 a barrel. That is the global view.
Johnson is hemorrhaging ministers, and at this moment he reminds me of this British Army commander in the Battle of the Bulge, Anthony McAuliffe, who was told, I'm going to paraphrase it, we're surrounded by the enemy, we're completely surrounded, and he goes, excellent, we can attack from any direction. So I can really imagine Boris Johnson right now talking about how this is great, he gets to streamline his government, and he's going to try and spin it, because he's certainly not going anywhere, he's not going to budge. But I wanted to talk about Rajapaksa and what he described as his humble request to Russia. Does he now risk the displeasure, at the very least, of the West in appealing to Russia in this way? And how might it affect his IMF talks, trying to bail Sri Lanka out of the appalling crisis?
Well, as I understood it, we're talking about Sri Lanka, yes? And as I understand it, what the country is somehow between the demands of India and China, and now a call on Putin. I suspect they're trying to work out where to go right now. I mean, it is a country which is bankrupt and also short of everything, and they've had demonstrations in the street and so on. The IMF, as I understand it, has not walked away. They did get to a certain point where no deal was announced, but the IMF are walking away, and then I think will return with more stuff. What that means as far as the IMF is concerned and so on. I mean, if we're looking at Russia as being a sort of place of last resort when you go when you need something, I mean, it doesn't sit very well, does it, in international relations with the rest of the world that have supposedly withdrawn from importing Russian oil and gas. So, but I mean, Sri Lanka must be very, very desperate indeed, and it will not come without strings attached. No question about that.
All right. So for some funny reason, about 10 p.m. yesterday, I got watching GB News, and I saw Stanley Johnson there, Boris Johnson's father, and he made mention, of Boris taking part in the Eating War Games, and he's very prepared for war. And it looks as though a part in Britain are there to support Boris Johnson. But will he survive? What's going to be the outlook of UK bonds as regards all of this shenanigan going on? A lot of us feel it's time for Boris to go. He should just go and shush away now. But he wants to fight till the end, He's an Eton boy. He's gone to the war games, and he can use that. And I also want to talk about inflation in the Eurozone. It looks as though the ECB is doing nothing about inflation in the Eurozone because it keeps rising.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. And they are way behind everybody else in terms of central banks. I don't have a personal insight into, well, I've got an insight. I don't have a personal journey into the minds of what's going on in the ECB. My guess about it is that they are being very, very careful indeed, because they have all these economies yanked together under the one currency, under the one monetary system, which are at very, very different stages of their economic development. And I think that probably is holding them back. And there has to be a unanimous vote as far as the ECB is concerned as to what they're going to do, and that proved that. And I would imagine, I simply get from what the discussions actually are that this is proving extremely difficult to do. As far as Boris Johnson is concerned, again, yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty sure he will go. There are plenty of other people. I think the bottom line is he cannot call an election because that would drag the Queen into it for all sorts of constitutional reasons. That wouldn't happen. The Conservative Party has its own rules, and what will happen is, I suspect that over the next, I mean, it could be happening right now. It's been that sort of a morning. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen over the weekend. I think there will be another leader being proposed and being voted on next week. Whatever he does, he is still, in inverted commas, in the power. So he's still in number 10 until that a new leader is actually installed. But given the amount of ministerial and lawmaker resignations so far, I mean, it just doesn't look tenable at the moment. And I think that the majority of people, and he sacked his good friend Michael Gove, as you know, yesterday. And I think that a lot of people are saying to him, look, what you need to do is you need to go with dignity. You need to say, look, I'm leaving for the good of the country and just go. Really, I think that seems to be the mood right now. It could have happened right now. It could happen tonight. It could happen now. It could happen at lunchtime.
All right, thank you so much, Michael. And if there's anything I've learned in all of this episode, that you can be in power but lack authority. I think that's what Boris is now. Very sad reminder.